Mui, ke re ho wena le ha o ka ba wa rera tsa bophelo ba hao jwang kapa jwang. Bophelo bona le tsela eo ka yona bo ka o kgelosang ka yona. Tshebediso e mpe ya dithethefatsi e fetohile mohlorisi kapa yona koduwa ka hare ho metsana le metsana ya rona. Ka shekore Motse Kapa re etetse Ntate Paul Talliard. Ntate Paul Talliard ke motho ya ileng a re bophelong a ba le tsohle empa ha morao a thella mme a lahlehelwa ke tsohle. Tabakgolo ke utlwisetsa batho ba ileng ba phela jwale ka dinaletsana. Batho ba ileng ba le tsohle empa ha morao ba ile ba kgesemela ba iphumana ba le kojwana di mahetleng mme ba iphumana ba se ba sena letho. Empa ho le jwalo ba ile ba ema ka maoto ba lwana gagaulane molamo wa tshepe ba busetsa molamo sefateng hore le bona ebe ka jeko ba phela bophelo bo itseng tjha. Mui lenaneo ke lona le itlhommeng pele la Back from Zero kanaleng ya rona ya bobedi ya SABC2. Nna ka lebitso ke Lebogangwa Matjhedi e tla le nna re bua le Ntate Talliard o ikgolele molemo. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Who is Paul Talliard?
Well, I had a normal life, sort of normal township life, if that can be called normal. My parents could afford to send me one of the best schools at the time, so I had a fairly good education. But like for any young boy in a township, the temptation to do drugs and the temptation to join a gang is always very big, and at the age of about 14, I decided to dabble with soft drugs and joined a little gang and so forth. So yeah, my dad died when I was 11, and it's not that I'm blaming that fact, but I grew up without a dad at a very important part of my life. I reached puberty and my dad died, and I found myself without real direction or a role model. In hindsight, I know I was looking for real love or a father figure.
Paul was 'n baie aktiewe jongman en na my vader se heengaan kon ek sien dat hy verander deurdat hy stil kon word en nie meer belang gestel het in die dinge wat hy gedoen het nie. Nee, hy was meer net gelê by die huis en TV kyk. As kind was hy 'n regte boelie. Hy het ons kinders geskop vir alles wat hy wou hê en ons het nie baie van hom gehou nie. As kind nie.
I managed to finish my education. I became a fireman, and the great thing about becoming a fireman in 1984 was that the then government of the Western Cape had decided that firemen and ambulancemen would get the same wages as our white colleagues, which was not the issue in the country. So here I was a junior fireman, and I was earning more than a warrant officer in the police service. And I had this extra money. Besides that, I also had a housing subsidy. So I had a flat, was earning a nice wage. My bond repayments on my flat at times was 90 odd rand, which if you work it out, it's almost nothing. So a lot of spending money.
Paul, being a fireman at the time, how much did you earn and what did you spend your money on?
Well, I would say I earned a comfortable wage. Way back, I think 4,000 rand a month was quite a nice amount of money. And of that money, approximately 99% of my money would go to drugs and of course alcohol as well. I remember not eating much because that is just what drug addicts do. They don't eat a lot. I was always a skinny guy. Never worried to buy clothes and stuff, but my main expense was my drug habit. Even so that I was reluctant to get married or to get into a serious relationship because I was thinking that now I have to spend money on the lady or the baby or the marriage. So yeah, very selfish, spent almost all my money on drugs. And of course rent was important, or my bond repayment was important, so I had to pay the bond. But as I said, I got sucked into the crack cocaine habit, and it spelled the end of me. as a fireman and also as a young man.
Why was it so important for you to spend money on drugs? What is it that you wanted to close?
Well, I think the main thing about drugs is it lies to you. It tells you things are going to be okay when things are not going to be okay. So, yes, of course, there's the physical addiction where you do crave these drugs, but the psychological part is the one I think that's the most devastating. Because when you're without drugs, you think, hey, I better watch my step, or I'm going to lose my job, or I'm going to lose my flat. But as soon as you partake, especially drugs like cocaine, it starts to lie to you. Don't worry, things are going to be okay. And of course, in the long run, things are never okay.
So tell us, how did the use of drugs affect your work?
Well, it affected my work very badly, very negatively. There was times when I was either late or I didn't come to work. There were times when I didn't feel like working with the other members as a team. And as you know, in the fire department, you have to work together as a team to be effective. And I would drink myself to a standstill and then have a couple of hits of cocaine and I would be artificially sober. Because that's what cocaine does, it takes you up on another trip where you think you're sober but you're actually still drunk. So I used to go to work in this sort of state and I would sit on the fire engine, I'd refuse to get off the fire station, stupid things like that. And although my colleagues tried their best to assist me, my decisions and my habit would eventually be my downfall, and I've got nobody to blame except myself and my drug habits.
Mosebetsi wa Paul le lekeno la hae le letle le dirisedile ka mosing. Re tswela pele ka palena ha re khutla papatsong. O buhile back from zero. Lenaneo leo nnehang morolo ro hlole mathata ao a ditjhelete. Ka o tlisetsa batho ba ileng ba lahlehelwa ke tsohle empa ha morao ba kgona ho fetola maphelo a bona. Paul, here you are a fireman and you are a drug addict. What moment that stood out for you at the time?
Well, I would say there was a few moments that I'm not proud of. I remember going to a fire. And when we arrived at the fire, there was a lot of children clapping their hands because here come the firemen. And they were like all around me and clapping, hello, Mr. Fireman. And I was so drunk, I couldn't walk on my own 2 feet. The one kid said, hey, Uncle Fireman, I can see that you're drunk. And I realized, wow, what an idiot I am. Because, and these kids, I could see in their eyes they were really disappointed because their hero, the fireman, was drunk.
Did it occur to you that you need this job to survive? And should you lose this job, what you were going to do to survive?
That occurred to me when I was sober. And like I said, I spent most of my earnings on drugs. So I was sober for a very little time during the week and so forth. But yes, when I was in the fire department, I knew they knew that I was a pretty good fireman. And some of them tried their best, some officers and some of my bosses tried their best to keep me in the fire department. So there was a stage I was seeing a psychiatrist. I was seeing a psychiatrist every Tuesday to try and, find out what the problem is. Why am I doing so much drugs? Why am I misbehaving? Because that's not who I was. And then there was a time I was in rehabilitation. Unfortunately, both didn't work for me, and I regressed back into drugs. I left my hat to some of my former bosses. They really tried to keep me there. But I was just out of control and they needed to get rid of me in the long run.
Let us talk briefly about relationships. When you're involved with drugs, it messes up your relationships, whether with money, with relatives, or with families. How did you handle all of that?
Well, you put it in a nutshell. I hardly saw my family. All I had was a live-in lover, and the rest of the friends were all drug addicts. So what happened was, when you have friends who are drug addicts, they don't really tell you like, hey, listen, Paul, you really need to watch it or you're going to lose your job. They're coming for the drugs. They're not really interested in your welfare. And unfortunately, that's the truth. So whoever may be listening, I can tell you that straight in your face.
Toe Paul met dwelms deur mekaar was sy vriendekring ook nie goeie mense nie. En dit het vir my baie seer gemaak omdat ek geweet het hoe hy groot geword het. Hy het in die kerk groot geword, hy het geweet wat dit is om die Here te kan ken en om nou te sien dat hy met hierdie verkeerde mense betrokke is. Dit het vir my baie seer gemaak.
Paul, here you are, as a fireman, you were fired, you get your pension fund. What was the plan with the money? And did you also maybe plan to find another job?
I got quite a substantial pension payment. Number one, I had no plan for the future. Number two, I had a sort of idea, because I knew at the time firemen were scarce in Cape Town. So I sort of put my money on the fact that there will be jobs in other fire departments, even in other provinces. But financially, I had no plan. And being a drug addict, if you add the two together, it's a recipe for disaster. So basically, I had an old black coat. That was back in the day of the punk movement. I had an old black coat, and in this coat, I had withdrawn my money from the bank, and all in all, it totaled, I think, about 50,000 Rand. I could either paid my bond or done something, but instead I drew it. I put it in my black coat, and my daily routine was to wake up in the morning, open my cupboard, just put my arm in my black coat, and pull out whatever amount of notes came out, and that would be the amount of drugs I would buy for the day. So I would buy about 10 units of crack cocaine, some alcohol to, just to relax things a bit, and of course the old Cape Town favorite, mandrakes, about 6 or 8 mandrakes. So I would spend roughly 2,000 Rand a day on my habit, and I never used to count my money.
All right, Paul. Now, at some point you got broke. Did you find another job?
Actually, yes. I was very fortunate. I went to the docks to go find a job. And I eventually did find a job. And this job, it was a ridiculous job. I think it paid like 10 Rand an hour. So I really didn't make any money. But round about the third week on this job, there was an oil rig. And on the oil rig was one of my old fireman buddies. He actually managed to get me a job on the oil rig. So within 2 days I was there. I was a member of the crew of an oil rig, and I did quite well there. They picked me as part of the crew to go overseas and to go, drill for oil and so forth. And here again I was earning some really nice money, but unfortunately I still hadn't kicked my habits. To be quite frank, I think I became worse because I now had more money, and I was actually buying a lot more alcohol than I usually did, because a lot of the oil rigs guys do a lot of drinking. But the money I was earning there also just went to alcohol and drugs, and I started misbehaving again. I missed the odd trip. I even missed helicopter trips. I went to work in an unfit state, and I think that was one of the main reasons why they got rid of me on the oil rigs. And this really hit me hard, because I had been promised a better job. I had a better job offer on the oil rigs, earning much more money as a safety officer. And there I'd now destroyed the last hope. And that was when I was on my way down now. And a life of hunger and sleepless nights, feeling sorry for yourself and thinking about the chances you had, but you never took it. And now you're all alone.
Mui, tantanyane ne se tla gangwa ke le ruile. Pholo o ne ile le gongwana hodimo. A sa lemoe re mekgwa ya hae le tshebediso e bohlaswa ya ditjhelete e ka mo senyetsa bophelo. Ena ke Back from Zero, mo batho ba re phethelang ka menyaka le mahlomola a tlileng le tjhelete. Ana ke maeto a bona a qadileng ka ho hloka tshepo, empa ha morao ba thaba mme ba phela bophelo bo tjhatsi. Here you are now, again you are unemployed, and you had a chance to pay for your flat and you did not. Now, what is happening from there?
I remember sitting in my flat one day, and I heard this knock on the door. And as we opened the door, it was the bank manager. And they came to tell me that, sorry, sir, but today we're auctioning your flat. And I tell you, I sat there. While I acted cool, inside, I felt like the earth could have swallowed me. It was a horrible feeling. And eventually they auctioned my flat and I had to leave. So I had to move from a prestigious estate back to the township where my mom lived. And it was a horrible feeling.
I can imagine being a drug addict must have cost some of the valuable relationships in your life. And now you have to go back home. And then going back home, how was the situation at home? Did they accept you as their old Polly, or?
Well, actually, it wasn't that pleasant an experience. You know what they say about mothers. They're sometimes the only ones we have. And my mother accepted me with open arms. It was a small house. It was a sub-economic house. And half my family and my mother was living there. The others weren't that happy, but they certainly didn't turn me away.
When Paul returned to my mother's house, I wasn't so happy about it because I thought it was unfair for him to put his burden on my mother. But afterwards he had nowhere to go, so he was forced to return when he lost everything.
Some of my family, or most of my family, was, you know, you can't expect your family to come bring you groceries every week. So some of them did support me, but you can't support somebody forever. Something has to happen. And I ventured out occasionally, and it wasn't necessarily a good thing because I found myself spending time at the local shebeen more. So my comeback wasn't that good. My daily routine was sitting at the shebeen, and then very old friends would pop by and say, we remember you, Paul, and they'd buy me a drink. And it wasn't long after that, I was back on the bandwagon, drinking every day. While there was no money for drugs, I now had substituted drugs for cheap alcohol. You know, you get these 10 rand bottles of wine that everybody drinks who have no money. And my days consisted of going to a soup kitchen in the morning for a cup of black coffee, and then going again in the afternoon. And on the way back from the afternoon soup kitchen, we would look for ways to, somehow get a couple of rands to buy some more cheap wine the evening. And that was my life for quite some time.
Before we unpack the issue of the soup kitchen, you worked before.
Yeah.
And you know how important it is to afford.
Yes.
And now you are back home.
Yeah.
Did it ever occur to you that you need money to survive? You need to actually earn a living?
Yes, of course. I did try. I tried a number of fire departments. Lucky for me, I had some qualifications in the fire department, so it wasn't like I didn't know what I was doing. So what happened was, I would normally come into the final interview where there were perhaps only 3 guys for one position, or maybe 20 guys for 15 positions. So I'd be shortlisted all the time. But I could never discover that on the shortlist, at the moment of the shortlist, I never got the job. Until eventually I found out that a certain officer in the Cape Town Fire Services was actually phoning other fire departments and warning them about me, that listen, or they would phone him and say, what do you think of Paul Talliard? Shall we hire him as a fireman? Because we see he's shortlisted. He's one of the best guys we got here for the job. And then this guy would say, no, don't employ him. He's a drug addict. And this was the reason why I couldn't get any formal employment. And I eventually ended up, there was just no hope. I couldn't even get a job as a security.
Paul, how did your mother react to all of this? I mean, she gave you a chance when nobody was keen.
Yes, correct. If it wasn't for my mother, I'm not sure if I would still be alive today. Because that would have meant that when I lost my flat and my job at the fire department, I'd have gone straight to the streets. But because of my mother, I actually had a place to live. And just before I got the other offer to go work on the oil rigs, my mother had passed away.
When my mother died, he was very sad because I think he was my mother's favorite. And even when we lost my father, he was very young. So he felt like he was denied of everything of having parents because he never married, you see. So he was very close to my mother.
And so now I was alone. My mother had now allowed for me in her will, while I didn't inherit the house, I was allowed to stay there. Because of my love for alcohol and drugs, I was now beginning to allow people to come inside the house and to do some drugs. So what happened was, young people would come tick in the house, but they would offer me a sort of payment by way of a bottle of wine or some other drugs. So the worst thing possible actually happened. I turned my mother's house into a real drug den, and a tick house, as they call it in the townships.
Now you have turned the house into a crack house. How did the family react to all of this?
Well, the family was horrified. Neighbors, former friends, they were all pretty upset. So a lot of them wrote to the authorities and complaining about the activities, the negative activities taking place in the house. And my family also came to hear about it, and they were very upset. And in fact, I was told to leave the house if I don't come right.
The way I felt when Paul turned my mother's house into a drug house, I was, there's no word to explain that. My mother was a born-again Christian, and to have her home turned into a house where men and women came to use drugs, I was so angry that I just cut myself completely off from him. Because he had it all. I think he was the best off of all our children. And now he's gonna have the benefit of the house also. So I really that time felt to sell the house and just not worry even where Paul is going.
So there I was, basically on the verge of being homeless. No job, no hope, down and out.
Ka motsotso ona bophelong ba hae, Paul o ne a sa lemohore ha a batla ho ba le bophelo bo nang le boleng, o ne a tobane le tsela e le nngwe fela, ke hore a iphumane a le ho back from zero. Re a o amohela. Ena ke back from zero. Lenaneo leo batho ba buang ka mathata a bona ditjhelete. Le hore e ka ba kgonne jwang ho hlola mathata ana hore ebe ka jeko ba phela maphelo a phethahetseng. How was your life influenced by the people who surrounded you at the time? What was a day like for you?
Yeah, a typical day. And you're very right. I had now surrounded myself by people who were like me. People who were down and out. So our day would consist of waking up early in the morning because we were hungry. And there were certain soup kitchens that were quite a distance. So we had to walk. And we had to walk there every morning just to get a cup of black coffee and 2 slices of bread. We would then head off to Cork Bay, which is a beach nearby, or a harbour nearby. And there we would try and forage and looking into the bins for empty bottles to change, loafing, anything we can get our hands on just to make sure that we can buy some booze in the evening.
In all of this, there must have been your lowest moment in life. And also tell us, at what point did you confront yourself and say, at this point, I would really like to change my life?
Yeah, a very good question. It's quite amazing because I had really low points and that had a bearing on my decision to really do something to change my life. One morning, I was very hungry and I was walking along the road to the soup kitchen, but I was so hungry and I looked into a bin and I saw a packet of McDonald's chips. And I took out this packet of McDonald's chips and I started eating because I was very hungry. I think I didn't eat for 3 days. So I ate these chips. But the vagrant came along, and here's the amazing thing. Took out 10 rand and said to me, get yourself something to eat. I sat in astonishment. And while it's funny now, at the moment it wasn't funny for me because I had to reflect that I was a guy. I used to go to work by chopper. At times I could have lunch in Mexico City and breakfast in Los Angeles. But here I'm sitting with a packet of McDonald's chips that I took out of the bin. And it was then that something in my mind just clicked and just said, so far and no more.
From that moment of reflection, what was the next step in your life?
Well, the next morning I woke up and my roommate said, he's got a couple of rands there, shall we do some drugs? I said yes. We could afford half a tablet. And while we were doing the drugs of the morning, he said to me, have you heard of this new soup kitchen? I said, what soup kitchen? And then he proceeded to tell me about the new soup kitchen that opened up quite nearby. And he said to me, do you know that they actually give out Woolworths sandwiches there? And I sort of looked at him cynically and thought, that's impossible. And then he proceeded to explain to me how Glenda's soup kitchen actually runs. And he said that, you know, the people get treated with dignity. You have a 3-course meal, you have cutlery, you have proper plates and so forth. And I was very curious. And I remember as we were finished up doing the drugs, my last word stream was, "I'll see you later. I just want to go see what they up to there at Glenda Soup Kitchen."
So describe to us when you got there. Did your friend tell you the truth? I mean,
Well, he was telling the truth. I was quite surprised when I got there. There was no noisy queues. The people were seated nicely. There was like an element of peace there. And they even came to chat to me and said, "Look, man, we will support you. If you try and change your life, we will be there for you." And I didn't think much of it, but they started serving the food. They came with trays, while in other soup kitchens, we had to stand in the queue. Here we were, actually being served with trays. Later in the day, I would go up to Glenda and would tell her, "Listen here, I'm really fed up of this life I'm living. Do you think you can help me?" And she did. She immediately responded positively, and within days, she was at my house. Couple of food parcels, underwear, deodorant, these things that help you on. And even a few days after that, she offered me casual jobs, come to cut the grass. And so it became more or less, I began to get more substantial incomes from people that she knew that I would work for. And within 2 weeks, I kicked a 35-year-old drug habit. And I was now willing and raring to go and helping out in the soup kitchen. When I met Glenda and her team, the genuine sincerity that they had about them and their genuine concern for the well-being of others sort of rubbed off on me. And I thought, I can't disappoint these genuine and loving people. So for me, when I felt like, hey, I think I need to take some drugs, I would call Glenda and she would come through and we would talk. So I really had some very good support from the soup kitchen staff. And I can really say for me, it wasn't a great big struggle to kick the habit. I just found myself clean, and that was it. I never ever went back to drugs.
Well, it wasn't hard for him to accept the help because he recognized that he do need help. And this was his only way out. Being a drug addict for so many years, change had to come. Paul came to help us. He came on board on the team, and when he transformed his life, he came on board and he came to help us. And that is how we connected.
now you have access to money again. This time around, what was your relationship like with money?
Yeah, this time I was much more careful. I was particularly careful not to fall into the same trap I had before. And I started banking.
Now you're already on your path to change your life. With that kind of inspiration and determination, what did you do?
Well, it wasn't actually me. I was just helping around in the soup kitchen, and then one day Glenda said to me, you need to do something about the men in the soup kitchen. And I thought for a moment, and as I was thinking, I turned around and faced the audience. And that was when it hit me. I saw about 150 men in the soup kitchen, and I knew that this was a problem. And what to add to it, furthermore, amongst the men, there were their sons and their grandsons. So in actual fact, in the soup kitchen, we found 3 generations of men. And as we all know, that doesn't bode well for the future because it creates a sort of welfare dependency mindset. And so that day, I spoke to the men and I said, who wants to stay behind and we can chat and see if we can change our lives. And out of the 150 men, 8 guys stayed behind. And that was the foundation for Hands of Honor. And we started off as a support group first. And more guys came. And that was the start.
Hands of Honor. What are we talking about here?
Well, basically, it is about honor. And it is about restoring honor. What I saw in the soup kitchen was something very painful. And I thought, let's start something, man. Let's start something we can use as a vehicle to get us out of the soup kitchen and back to mainstream society, even as role models, so that other kids don't fall into the same trap we fell in, don't feel the same pain we felt, and don't cause the same amount of damage we cause to our families and our friends and society as a whole. So that's what it's all about, restoring honor and then sharing this honor so that we as a community can grow. Because while soup kitchens are a good thing, because people are hungry, it's not a place for a man to go in decade after decade after decade after decade. That has to stop.
Paul het 'n groot impak gemaak in my lewe self. My oë kom oopmaak om te sien die nood wat in die omgewing self is waar hy bly. En vandag kan ek waarlik waar sê hy is een van die beste. Ek het behoort ook aan 'n gang wat genoem was Corner Boys. Dit het nie vir my gebaat nie. Was ook rokeloos, ook in drugs betrokke, ook in drank betrokke, maar verlossing gekry van dit. Maar Paul, wat ek kom doen het en wat hy vir my beteken het 'n verandering gemaak en het my die pad vorentoe gewys wat ek geweet het dat daar 'n hoop is vir my wat veel beter is in die lewe.
My lewe was eers baie push geweest. Ek het nie standbeelde gehad van my lewe nie. Ek het geen direksie gehad nie. Mr. Paul was amper net soos 'n mentor vir my. As ek weet vandag moet daar eet, moet iets add by my lewe. Hoe was dit geweest vorentoe? As het 'n baie solid impact gemaak in my lewe. Soos jy al sê, concrete. Dit was 'n concrete, dit was 'n fondasie geweest. Ek het hier gekom sonder 'n fondasie. En van die fondasie wat Mr. Paul vir my gehelp het, uitgeleer het, en ek het van daar aan gebou.
Hands of Honor ne se le yona fela tshepo eo Pholo a e hlokang. Ho ye ho thwe, re ruta ka bokgabane seo re hlokang ho ithuta sona. Na e ka ba tshepo ena ya Paul ile ya tlisa bophelo bo botjha bakeng sa hae le ba bang? Ena ke Back from Zero, mo batho ba re phethelang ka menyaka le mahlomola a tlileng le tjhelete. Ana ke maeto a bona a qadileng ka ho hloka tshepo, empa ha morao ba thaba mme ba phela bophelo bo tjhatsi. So now you have all these men, you have formed a support group. Then what did you do from there?
There was a worrying aspect. Because of the backgrounds of the men and the illegal ways they used to get money to feed their families and feed their habits, how would they now earn incomes if they forsook crime and drugs? And I came up with the idea to form an NPO because there were so much men and it seems logical. And in the mission, our mission in the soup kitchen was to sort of try and create jobs for these men, which is easier said than done. I was on the internet one day and somehow I heard about the concept called social enterprises. I saw the name And the name was Tom Shute. And I thought, let me email this man. And I emailed him, and he replied the very next day. And he actually invited me to meet with him. And I was very excited. I met with him, and he said to me, you know, we're from England, and we coming to introduce this new concept in Cape Town. It's called social enterprises. So while obviously there were social enterprises, but these guys were now bringing it to grassroots organizations like me. So I was very fortunate. You know, things just happened so fast. The one moment one lady was phoning me and saying, do you want 500 Christmas trees? I said yes, because remember we were now registered NPO, so we were like a charity. And this large retail group sent me these Christmas trees. Some of them were broken and so forth, and the men actually fixed it. We sold them on flea markets, we sold them online and so forth, and we managed to make 8,000 Rand. So now I'm sitting with 8,000 Rand, and I'm sitting with the men, what do I do now? And then I had a bit of a brainwave. I took half the money, and I bought some paint and screws and nails, and I said to the men, now you've got to show your worth, because next Saturday, all you guys are going to come volunteer, and we're going to go paint the local primary school, which was badly in need of a coat of paint. And so I wait for the Saturday. And the Saturday morning arrived, and to my greatest astonishment, 60 down and out men arrived with their paintbrushes. We went to go paint the school. We took some pictures, so now I had some perfect before and after pics. And I took these pictures and I sent it back to the retail chain that sent us this Christmas trees. And they were very happy with what we did. And considering they a very large retail chain, they now kept on sending us stuff. They kept on sending us old stuff. And that was 6 years ago. Companies, colleges, advertising agencies, you name it, they send us anything they don't need anymore. The men upcycle it. By upcycling, I mean they either fix it or repair it, and then we sell it again. So it's not like recycling. Whereas recycling is using the same thing over and over again, upcycling is taking something broken or obsolete, adding some value to it by repairing it, and then sending it back up the retail chain, hence the term upcycling. So 50% go to the men as a salary, and with the other 50% we go around in the community and we try and change a negative space into a positive one. So far, in the last 7 years, we've already did 16 spaces.
Paul, I must be honest, you're absolutely doing a great job, I must say.
Thank you.
Do you separate your personal finances from your business finance?
Well, yes and no. Social entrepreneurs has got a lot of passion for helping people and helping to solve problems that keep people in poverty. So we get emotional, and we will take of our salary or from our personal finance to help prop up the business.
Is this perhaps your new addiction?
That is also a very good question, because in hindsight, if I'm going to just keep on giving to keep my passion for helping people going, I might as well end up broke. And when I'm broke, who am I going to help? So wow, it's really something to think about.
Are you not worried that maybe one day you will get the edge of spending money, you'll go back spending money into drugs again?
Not really, I'd never think about it. I really can't see myself falling back into drugs. It has been too miserable a time in my life. So I've learned a hard lesson. I'm scared. I'm not going to go back.
He's come too far. And he's got to be an example for others. And being busy, and this keeps him so busy, that is no time for him to even think of going back to his old life.
I never believed that he had changed. I just thought it was one of his tricks again. But today I am very proud of what Paul has achieved. He has really changed.
So today, what are you learning today? How do you continue to change your life each and every day?
Today, I've become a bit of I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing, but I've developed an eye for business. I have to be careful how I make this money. Am I doing it in a righteous way? Am I abusing people? Am I treading on other people's toes and so forth? So yeah, it's all about having the correct business principles, because even that can come back to haunt you. If you have sort of false or negative business principles, it can come back to haunt you.
Thank you very much, Paul, and I hope that the work that you do will spread across the world and change lives.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Paul. Leeto la Paul Talliard a se leeto fela la go lokoloa tshebedisong ya dithethefatsi le jwala. Ke ka hore hape a be le kamano tse ntle le ditjhelete. Sena se kenyelletsa le ho ba le lekeno le itseng ka kgwedi kapa pokellonyana ya tjhelete hore a se hlole a tshetleya bophelo ba hae ho rekeng dithethefatsi ka sekoloto. Bekeng e tlang re utlisetsa hape e mong wa batho ba ileng ba boya sekwele le ha fela ba ne se ba wile. Ho fihlela re kopana hape, ha ebe kgotso.